respected guests, our chief guest to the dais and for deeper pressure. Our chief guest, Honorable Justice Sashikanta sir, to come to the dais and for deeper pressure. Respected Professor Dr. Dansana sir, to come to the dais and for deeper pressure. I request Senior Advocate sir, President Adhivakta Parishad, High Court Unit, come to the dais. I request Shri President Adhivakta Parishad, Cuttack, to come to the dais. Now I
technician itulah tak wasit cocok sound cincin technician lah.
Now we shall rise up for Vande Mataram, and the Chhattisgarh Director is requested to lead.
Mataram, Vande Mataram, Sujalam, Subhalam, Valayasitalam, Sasya Samalam, Mataram, Vande Mataram, Shubhra Josna Pulakitayamini, Pulla Kusumita Dhrumadala Shobhini, Suhasini, Sumadhura Bhasini, Sukhadam Varadam Mataram, Vande Mataram, Koti Koti Kantha Kala Kala Ninada Karale, Koti Koti Bhujai Dhruta Kara Kara Vale, Avaloke Mahaito Bale, Bahubala Dharini Namami Tarini, Vipudala Varini Mataram, Vande Mataram, Tumi Vidya, Tumi Dharma, Tumi Hruti, Tumi Marma, Tvangi Prana Sarire, Bahute Tume Ma Sakti, Hrudaye Tume Ma Bhakti, Tumari Pratima Gadi Mandire, Mandire, Vande Mataram, Vangi Durga Dasa Praharana Dharini, Kamala Kamala Dala Biharini, Vani Vidya Daini, Namami Kam, Namami Kamala, Amara सरलां सरलां सुस्मितां भूस्मितां धरणी भरणी मातरं वन्दे मातरं वन्दे मातरं। भारत माता की जय।
Our chief guest, Hon'ble Shri Justice Sashikanta Mishra.
Hello.
Hello. Shubha Sandhya, Jai Jagannath. The respected guests need no introduction here. Still then I venture to introduce them to this august gathering. Our chief guest, Hon'ble Shri Justice Sashikanta Mishra, he was born on 17th January 1967. Completed his early education from St. Joseph High School and Kendriya Vidyalaya, Bhubaneswar. Then passed ISc in first class from BJP College, graduated with Economics Honors from BJP College. Did his PG in Economics in first class from Ravenshaw College, Cuttack. Then completed his LLB from Dansana Law College. Started practice as an advocate in the High Court in 1996 in the office of Senior Advocate Narendra Kumar Mishra. Then started his independent practice in the year 2003. Dealt with labor, insurance company, consumer, cooperative, and legal matters, etc. appearing before the High Court and various courts and tribunals of the country. Minor was directly recruited in the cadre of district judge in the year 2009. Held various posts in the cadre and was elevated as judge of the High Court of Orissa on 19th October. We are extremely happy your Lordship joins with us in his way. Our chief speaker, Professor Dr. Prayas, Dansana, Assistant Professor Law, Sambalpur University. Born on 25/6/1972, having 19 years of teaching experience in law. Sir joined as Faculty of Law in the PG Department of Law, Sambalpur University in July 2004 and has been teaching jurisprudence, constitution law, business law, banking, insurance law and environment law. Sir, you have number of national and international publications of your training. We are extremely happy to receive from you as our chief speaker. Our President of Adhivakta Parishad, High Court Unit, Senior Advocate, is with us. Sir is presiding over this function. Then and our beloved President of Cuttack District Unit, Saroj Kumar Ji, is also present on the dais. I welcome all the dignitaries on the dais and off the dais. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Atiti Devo Bhava. Now it's time for presentation of flower bouquet to our distinguished guests. I request Sri Manas Ranjan Patra sir to present the flower bouquet to the chief guest. I request Sri Tej Kumar sir to present the flower bouquet to our chief speaker. I request Srimati Rajalakshmi Vishwam ma'am to present the flower bouquet to Sri Rudra Prasad sir. I request Sri Vishwaranjan Swami sir to present the flower bouquet to Sri Saraj Kumar ji. I request Abhishek Bhakti to present the flower bouquet to Sri Saraj Kumar. Thank you so much. Now I request Senior Advocate Shri Rudra Prasad Karasla, President of Adhivakta Parishad, Advocate, to preside over the program.
Good evening, all my friends. I now request Chief Speaker, introduction of Adhivakta Parishad, Shri Saroj Kumar ji. I'm sorry.
Respected guests on the dais and Adhivakta friends of the dais, I am giving a brief introduction of Adhivakta Parishad. The Akhila Bharatiya Adhivakta Parishad, a registered society under the Societies Act 1916, having motto of Nyaya Mohammed Dharma, is working all over the country. Since its inception in the year 1992, the Parishad is working towards the object of resurrecting Bharatiya values and to instill idealism in the hearts of legal professionals for improving efficiency and standards of the bar and judiciary of the country. The Parishad had the privilege of association of some India's most prominent and luminaries, which include late Justice Rumma Joyce, Shri U.R. Lalit, Shri Senior Advocate, Shri Uttam Chand Israni, Senior Advocate, Shri Prabhat Rao, Justice Prabhat Rao, Justice V.S. Koki, Justice Guman Lotha, and many more. On 7 September 1972, while inaugurating Akhila Bharatiya Adhivakta Parishad at New Delhi, its founder Shri Pant Thangde shared his vision of resurgent Bharat with the activities of Adhivakta Parishad. Worried about the efficacy of the system of justice, he highlighted the issue of non-ratification and implementation of various conventions of the International Labour Organization, lack of efforts to evolve uniform civil code, growing separatist tendencies, and non-implementation of Article 48 of the Constitution, non-availability of affordable and expeditious justice, and paucity of judges, etc. He underlined the need of fresh thinking of all the legal and constitutional aspects, and through changes in the law, legal system, amendments in the Constitution, and above all, change the psychology and of all involved in this process. The Parishad has already celebrated its Silver Jubilee on 2017 with the theme topic of Constitution and embodiment of Bharatiya values. During the year-long celebration across the nation, the Parishad extensively organized seminars, workshops, and educational programs across the country, wherein eminent personalities having knowledge of law and of society were invited to share their experience and knowledge with the members of Parishad. Thereafter, the Parishad planned to execute its policy of justice at the doorstep by setting up Nyaya Kendras, the legal aid centers throughout the country. It has adopted threefold activities. First, one is to run as many as study circles at par with continuing legal education programs involving the bar and the academics. The second is to run as many as Nyaya Kendras, at least one bar, one Nyaya Kendra, and the third one is to disseminate quality of legal literature through its quarterly magazine Nyaya Prabha, which it intends to reach every member of the bar and bench as well. Besides this primary activity setup, the Parishad is indulged in activities like holding a series of seminars, symposia, workshops, lectures, and so on round the year. The Parishad also observes various important days like Lawyers' Day, the Sthapana Divas, Samarastha Divas, etc. to create strong cadre to spearhead the mission. The Parishad is also engaged in 3-tier organizational setups, that is national level, state level and district level councils, and by holding periodical meetings and training workshops, the Parishad is able to create dedicated and trained cadre which takes up all the challenges and responsibilities to spread the organization in a systematic and desired manner. In true sense, the Parishad is dedicated to serve the whole of the society for common good of the people of Bharat. The Parishad seeks to make interventions in justice delivery system and to contribute to the law-making process for the welfare of the people. Parishad is working with non-partisan approach towards resolving the problems encountered by the society at large and the justice delivery system, in particular with special focus on marginalized section of the society. Adhivakta Parishad has been drawing the attention of the legal fraternity to various legal issues having social and cultural ramifications. The Parishad is it is the largest non-political organization of lawyers in India and is growing day by day, winning the hearts of the members of the legal fraternity. Adhivakta Parishad Orissa branch was established in the year 1999 and is also set to celebrate Silver Jubilee, which will commence from September instant. The Parishad seeks love, affection, patronage and blessings from one and all. Thank you all. Namaskar.
Thank you, Saroj Babu. Now, we are anxiously waiting for the topic to be deliberated by our Chief Speaker, Dr. Prayas, Dansana, Professor Sir, on the topic of constitutionalism and fundamental duties. Professor Sir.
Hello. Johar. Let me first, before addressing all of you, once again, let me convey my traditional gratitude by saying Johar to all of you. Honorable President of this meeting, Honorable Justice Mishra sir, and Suruji, and other members of the Adhivakta Parishad and other members of legal fraternity. Let me tell you, I'm a little bit nervous here. Probably I'm the only one who is an academic lawyer here. Rest, almost all of you are, though belongs to the legal fraternity, but you all are in the active legal practitioners. That is there. So probably I am the odd one here. But I am glad that you have given me this opportunity to share my thoughts on a topic like this. Of course, on the occasion of the continuing occasions of celebrations of Constitution Day. This is really a very important occasion so far as celebration of Constitution Day is concerned, and the topic that has been chosen, that constitutionalisms and the fundamental duties of citizens of India. Before putting into this topic, let me share this subtle understanding, and very often we quote that in the classroom, that you can have a constitution but not necessarily constitutionalism, and that speaks a lot. You can have a constitution but not necessarily constitutionalism. On that note, let me start. Why we are making a distinction from constitution to constitutionalism? we need to understand before proceeding further. And again, my tough task as a speaker, my task is that when we are talking about constitutionalism and linking that with the duties of the citizens, fundamental duties of the citizens. Normally, when we talk about constitutionalism, we, in a very simple, subtle way, in a precise manner, you can say, limited governance. Constitutionalisms refer to limited governance. And when we talk about governance, normally, within that structure of governance, we don't see the citizen there. We only look at the person, those who are very much there in that post of authority. They are holding the post of authority and they are discharging those duties. So my job is to set out a link between the citizens' fundamental duties that is there. Along with that, I have to talk about constitutionalism. There are, as all of you are aware, in the original constitution, we did have the fundamental duties. It was incorporated in the 42nd Amendment, and this further it was extended. 2002 Constitutional Amendment, right? 86 Constitutional Amendment, the 11th fundamental duties was incorporated. On that point, how I am visualizing that before 1967 or before 1976, whether there was no fundamental duties for the citizen, was there any void on that count? I have my reservation on that. Again, let me put these things into self for the time being. Now think about these eventful years. 15th August 1947, 26th November 1949, or for that matter 26th January 1950. What really changed as an individual, as an Indian, what really changed? As an individual, whether my status changed on that stroke of that midnight, 14th August 1947, what was my status before that? I was a subject of British Empire. With that stroke of the midnight, my status changed from subject to citizen. And being a citizen, my relationship with state, my relationship with government changed. As a subject, I didn't have that access to question the authority. But being a citizen, automatically I got those things. And with formulation of the constitutions, with the constitutions, my inherent rights were recognized. As an individual, my existence was recognized in my individual capacity, in my collective capacity, being part of the community. The entire equation changed there. But does it mean that I severed myself from the past? Whether I enter into a journey which is totally unknown to me, or do I have to carry forward my past experiences and proceed further? The Constitution is the key. How my transformations occur. That's why I engage myself in the process of a transformative constitution. It is not that the power has been handed over from one body to another body. The freedom struggle was not only a political event, it was much more than that. I was engaged in a socio-economic transformation. My struggle was there. We have picked up those things we have picked up those lines. Take for example, a very small example in that count. During that Constituent Assembly debate, emphatically, Pandit Nehru said that India has to be a republic. India has to be a republic. Now, if you look at the Indian history, full of king, queens, legends, all those things are there. For me, it was not an easy choice. I cannot break away from my history, but I have taken lessons from my history. So consciously I decided that India has to be a republic. So when we thought about establishing a republic, the power structures set out on people. Peoples are the center, the core. In the preamble, when we say that India is to be sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, mark all these words. These are concepts, these are values of India. And all are people-centric values. People-centric values, not authoritative-centric values, including when I am talking about sovereign authority. Because the sovereign powers, the source of Indian sovereign powers lies with people. When this objective resolution was passed, that was one of the first element, first item that was placed before the Constituent Assembly, wherein they laid down the blueprint of India. Wherein we decided, in fact, if you make a comparison between the objective resolutions and preamble of Indian constitutions, in the objective resolution categorically it is mentioned that all the public powers, the source is people. So, if you look at this segment, peoples are center. Again, as a student of jurisprudence, we normally talk about the Hobbesian schemes. Whenever we talk about rights, we always speak about corresponding duties. Rights in different forms, whatever forms that is there. Whether we call it claim, power, privilege, liberty, or for that matter, immunity. Corresponding duties are there, always there. You cannot understand rights unless and until you read into the duty that is there. Indian legal system, ancient legal system, was purely based on duty based. We have moved on, but luckily, in the 42nd Amendment, we inserted certain duties as fundamental duties of the citizens. With or without this fundamental duties chapter, duties are always there with the people. You cannot fulfill your rights unless and until duties are discharged. So it is equally important. It is equally important. So, look at the people. in a constitutional order or in a political society, peoples are endowed with public power. And these public powers has got humongous velocity. Unless and until you harness it, unless and until you tame it, unless and until you channel it in a proper directions, it may cause irreparable damage. It may undo its own existence. So it becomes very essential to put some kind of check on it. And Constitution play that. Constitution laid down that network which will put a restriction on this public power. So when we talk about public power, Constitution not only create authority or agencies of the state, not only it confers powers on all these instrumentalities of the state, it also limits their power. It sounds paradoxical. At one hand we talked about conferring powers, on the other hand we also speaks about limiting that power. But it is very important. Otherwise, absolute power corrupt absolute. You have to. Constitutionalism is that part which limit that public power that is being delegated to such authority by the people. Constitution is again, it is a legal necessity. It is a legal necessity. And one more thing. Normally when I talk to my students, initially when they inducted into the departments, I asked, what do you think about the Constitution? So invariably they talked about it is a tax, supreme law. No doubt about it. But is it only a text? Can I create and confine Constitution only into those texts? Is it not the fundamental values of that nations? With respect to India, very often it is in numerous literatures are there, especially in the political science books. We all have read this, that Indian Constitution is a borrowed Constitution. I have my reservation on that. I have my firm reservations on that. That can a Constitution be a borrowed one? Especially when I consider that Constitution carries the fundamental values of a nation. Can values of a nation be a borrowed one? I have a serious doubt. Of course, with time, I learn lessons from others. I may have taken the text from others, but when it will come to the questions of values, it cannot be borrowed. It cannot, or it is not supposed to be. Unless and until those values are not adopted by me, my body is going to reject. Values cannot be transplanted. No. It is very much there, deeply entrenched, deeply rooted in my existence. And those values are articulated in our preamble. So when I looked into this preamble, normally I say that my constitution starts with preamble and ends with preamble. Because when it was drafted, one of the first items, as I told you, was objective resolution. And one of the last items that was debated and discussed in the Constituent Assembly was preamble. Why they did that at a thing which is started at the beginning of the Constitution
deliberated and discussed at the end. We don't want to put anyone in any kind of misconception that what you are containing in my body, that would be mismatched with my Prayam Mukhabandha. No. So I have to understand. And more important, on this context again, let me, why at all there is a need for me to understand my constitution? Why at all? Of course, preamble is the probably one of the beautifully drafted document that is there for us in order to understand what my constitution is. I very often share this particular riddle with all my young student friends. Normally I share these things. Before engaging myself in any kind of constitutional classes, normally I do that. And that riddle is this one. I think we need to see that story. Small one, but think about a flute that is lying in the street. A flute is lying on the street and there are three claimants. There are three claimants. All these three claimants have their own reason for asking for that. All these three claimants have their own reason for it. The first one says, this flute should be given to me. Why? Because I cannot afford it. That's why it should be given to me. The second one says, I know how to play the flute. That's why it should be given to me. And the third one says, I have created this world. Hence it should be given to me. Now the real challenge is, just consider yourself that you are the arbitrators, how you are going to decide in whose favor you are going to give that, without being biased. It's a tough situation for us. We can have our own views on these things. Everybody has their own opinion on that, to whom it should be given. And in my classroom, normally there are three. The entire views were different. But again, this scenario, the argument that has been put forth by the claimants suggested three different societies. Three different societies. The person who claims that it should be given to him because he cannot afford it, we are talking about setting up an egalitarian society. The person who is saying that I know how to play the flute, we are talking about utilitarian society. And the person who claims that he has created that flute and hence it should be given to him, we are talking about libertarian society. Now the point is, what kind of society I want to establish? Based on that notions, I can say to whom I am going to give. My fundamental book, my fundamental notions is my constitution. I have to look into that part. What my constitution is saying. Probably the Constitution of America will suggest differently than mine. It depends. I leave it to you on which side you want to stand. But I normally ask this thing to my students that you need to understand your constitution first, then only you can decide. That would be your basis of opting for. And your decision is not a biased one. It was not an arbitrary decision. No. The moment we say that the limited governance and arbitrary decisions, despotic decisions, totalitarian states are totally contrast to each other. We have to, on this backdrop, we need to understand our constitution. And probably, without going detail into that constitution by reading the constitution, you understand, within the preamble, you understand what it is. The people of India, as I told you, constitution cannot be a borrowed one. In the language as such, it says that the people of India adopt, enact and give to themselves this constitution. Once you say that it is adopt, enact and given to yourself, where is the question of borrowing? Further, the people of India solemnly resolve themselves to constitute India into what kind of state that you want? Sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Often people question the word socialist and secular. Why at all? My professor used to say that those are this very sentiment of these things are very much there in the during the drafting of the constitution. It was very much there. It's just that people avoid it. I sometimes, in fact, I'm not sure whether you have seen these things or not. Unfortunately, if you look at CBSE's book, India book, where they have translated this preamble, unfortunately the translation is available. During the debate, categorically, we avoided to use the word. In fact, probably KD Sir probably, he suggested that in the name of God, and somebody probably Kamat says that why not in the name of goddess? Instead of with the people of India, that was the suggestion. But they were voting on that things, and all of them they avoided it by not using it, considering the kind of situation prevalent at that time. But if you look at the Oriya translation of this, especially the segment where the liberty portion is there, liberty of expression, belief, faith and worship. Somewhere it is mentioned that dharmiya vishwas, in Oriya it is mentioned there. Though it is not there, liberty of thought, expressions, belief, faith and worship. Belief, faith and worship. So, sometimes we dilute things. So in the proper perspective, we need to read our constitutions. Then only we can understand what would be my role. And proceeding further, I want to establish my India, sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. And in return, what do you expect from the state? What do you expect from the state? Justice, liberty, equality, fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individuals and unity and integrity of the nations. Again, mark the word dignity, assuring the dignity of the individual. Huge importance has been given to the individual dignity. Our unit was not nations. If you look at, again, I will request you, go through this Constituent Assembly debates, especially the latter part, where they emphasized on the individual rather than group, community. Because they strongly believe with the emancipations of the individual, the group interest will automatically be protected. So that part was there. But the moment we are talking about individual rights, automatically the duty would be there, not necessarily only with the states, with the corresponding individual. Our constitution strongly speaks about what? Speaks about non-discrimination, equality and non-discrimination, that is there. So when we read into this Article 14, 15 or 16, we normally look into the state non-discriminatory behavior. But what about the individual? What about horizontal discriminations? When I say horizontal discrimination, the discrimination caused by individual against the individual. When we engage in a transformative constitution, we heavily believe in that idea that we want to change. The society need to be directed in a particular direction that is there. Constitutionalism not only, as I told you, not only confer powers, it also limit the powers, as well as it also guide. It give directions. What about the PSP? What about fundamental duties? As I told you, that constitution is a set of values that is there, and these values are not part of convenience. No. There are most of such cases are there where Supreme Court has strongly spoke about this. Salwa case is a typical example. Utility and convenience is not the yardsticks of ensuring justice. It is not. No doubt government has their policies on that count, but utility is not the yardstick. They cannot be corrupt. No. Similarly, look at the other part. When we talk about limiting the powers, we also need to think about fixing the accountability. The authorities are accountable. So also people. Again, if you look at when we talked about a democratic republic which is centered around people, the authority or all the stakeholders need to look into the accountability part. And there are three segments to it. And personally speaking, the third one is more important for me than the first two. First two is there, they are equally important, but the third one is important. The first one is accountable to the people. Maybe electoral, but the accountability has to be there. The people need to question the authority on that count. It is not only a right, it is also a duty on the part of the people. Similarly, the accountability, there must be a open, transparent discourse with civil society. There has to be. And the third one is institutional accountability. Constitution creates institutions, fine. But when we talk about institutions, we need to see these things. Whether institutions accountability is there for the governments or for posterity that accountability has to be there. They must be accountable to the people. And once we are talking about accountability to the people, commitment has to be there for the constitution rather than the governments. Very often, when we talk about the constitutionalisms, and there are literatures, they put the constitutionalism at one hand, and on the other hand, we put democracy. Democracy, fine, people's voice, those things are there. But when we talk about people's voice, is it equivalent to majoritarian rules? Majority will decide? Answer is no. It cannot be. Once we are talking about constitutionalism. Because again, we have to go back to the values. The values for which the constitution is being created. Let me read out that particular portions. In M. Nagaraj's case, Justice Kapadia has talked about these things relating to constitutions. Constitution set out principle for an expanding future and is intended to endure for ages to come and consequently to be adapted to the various crises of human affairs. It set out the principle for an expanding future. The constitutions reflect the conscience of the people. Jurisprudentially also, if you look at these things, historical school, old gist, or for that matter, social contract theory, general will of the people. The constitution carries the conscience. It reflects the conscience of the people. So it cannot be altered with sheer number. A number cannot determine what my fundamental values would be. The fundamental values are, as I told you, deeply entrenched into my life. Again, there was a time when there was direct frontal attack on the constitutions. Direct frontal attack on the constitutions by trying to negate these values. Unfortunately, there are occasions when we notice in the name of the constitutions we are negating the constitution. If you look at the very first fundamental constitutional duty that was cast on the citizens, it says that it shall be the duty of every citizen of India to abide by the constitution and respects its ideal and institutions. And then it says the national flag and national anthem, the first one. The very first fundamental duties that is cast on citizens is that to abide by the constitution. That's why I am giving utmost emphasis on understanding what my constitution is saying. I have to. I need to understand my constitution. Then only I can adhere to the values of my constitution. Of course, the fundamental duties, they are not legally enforceable. But these values are used by the judiciary to restrict certain actions or allow certain actions. They are used as a tools to protect the rights of the people. Again, let me again emphasize on these things. When I am talking about use of arbitrary powers in contrast to constitutionalisms, it is equally applicable for people also. People are enjoying fundamental rights, no doubt about it. there any limitation to those rights and liberties? Of course, it is there. Can it be taken away? No. Under the structures, we have been allowed under certain grounds only. Those fundamental rights can be curtailed. Otherwise not. So how wisely we are going to use it? We have to see that. We have to pass on these things. Can we entertain the spirit of the constitutionalism without nurturing a proper constitutional culture? When I talked about constitutional culture, again you have to look at into those segments. These are extra legal belief and faith, extra legal belief and faith on the values of the Constitution. Without nurturing this constitutional culture, I don't think that it would be possible to protect the Constitution or you can maintain constitutionalism. And it becomes utmost requirement for each citizen, each people to have this, imbibe these constitutional cultures. These constitutional cultures always influence the development of the constitutional law as well as comes for the protection of constitutional laws. I'm not sure to what extent I can manage to convince you on these things. I know I have my challenges. As I told you, I am the odd man out here. But to my understanding, I try to convey my feelings on this count. And let me convey my gratitude to the team of Adhivakta Parishad. I'm not sure why they have chosen me. Because there are a lot of other speakers are there. Sir is there. Already we normally hear him. How smoothly they conduct. In fact, this is really an opportunity for us, the academicians, who have that direct access to the courtroom proceedings. Earlier we didn't have that. So luckily now we can hear them. So this is one step in the direction of developing that culture that I am talking about. Because those things need to be percolated to the grassroots level. And we live in the grassroots level. So let me convey my gratitude for doing these things, and let me convey my gratitude to the entire team of Adhivakta Parishad and the organization.
Thank you, Dr. Dansana. It was quite illuminating to hear your speech. Now, I request our Honorable Chief Guest of the evening, Justice Sashikanta Mishra, deliver his speech.
Namaskaram, good evening everybody. Esteemed President of this meeting, Senior Advocate Shri, the guest speaker, Professor Dansana, esteemed Mr. Saroj Ji, the respected Senior Advocate Shri Chandra Mahapatra, who is present here, and all other friends from the legal fraternity. On a lighter vein, when Professor Dansana said that he is the odd man out, I think he is wrong. I am also an odd man out. And I tell you how. I was a lawyer, but now I am not a lawyer. So I am the same almost. Now, and today, having 100 cases on my board, 100 cases means 200 lawyers. In each case there are two lawyers, one on this side, one on the other. So after facing 200 lawyers and again facing another group of lawyers, that is also different, so it also makes me an odd man out. And third thing, I tell you, after hearing the eloquent speech of Professor Dansana, I don't think I can add much to it. Nonetheless, having been given the responsibility, I will try my best to live up to it. Before I go to whatever little I have prepared, as I was confiding before Rudra, that I didn't really get time to prepare. This is a very heavy topic. I was otherwise busy, and you know, it's not that easy to prepare on such a short notice. Nevertheless, Professor Dansana really struck a chord in my heart when he said that he has reservations about that borrowed constitution thing. So what I will do is, I will request him to please visit our Museum of Justice. You must visit, and along with everybody else. Please, all of you visit it. I was involved in the building of that museum, so I can tell you, as you enter, the first thing that you see is the constitution. The replica of the original constitution, which was gifted by our former Chief Justice, Justice Muralidhar. There you have a photograph, which I personally got it from the Parliament Library after much search. It contains all the members of the Constituent Assembly in one single photograph. Photograph of such high resolution that you can expand it to any level, but it will not. It will not distort. Underneath it, that photograph is a page which contains the signatures of those members of the Constituent Assembly who belong to Orissa. So I would. That is why I would. It will give you a sense of belonging. को माने अमर को माने अमो स्टेट को माने मेंबर थी कृष्णचंद्र प्रजापति विश्वनाथ दास शांतनु कुमार दास नंद कृष्ण बोस and around 9 members you will find their signatures, the replica of their signatures. And when we were building the museum, we had a consultative committee comprising of eminent historians of the state, anthropologists, and of course, lawyers, judges. One eminent historian, Dr. Nivedita Mahanti, she just called me aside. She told me, Justice Mishra, you see, this is like a book. The museum is like a book. Each gallery is like a chapter. Do it accordingly. And in fact, that struck my mind. So the first gallery that we have is something what we call as evolution of justice. There we have attempted to show how justice, the concept of justice has evolved from the very beginning, from the ancient times to the present day. In one small room we have tried to do that. That is why I say, I would like to invite you to please visit it. And we have also recently come out with the first volume of the judicial history of Orissa. There also we have covered the ancient and medieval parts. That is why I say Professor Dansana struck a chord in my heart when he said that it is the question of borrowing anything from anybody doesn't arise. Yes, we have accepted certain good elements from different constitutions, American constitutions, the Ireland's constitution, and so on and so forth. But that doesn't mean that we didn't have those values. We always had those values, and this is something what is not only dear to me, but it is also intricately connected to the topic that we have selected today. And for that I must congratulate the organizers, because more often than not, as Professor Dansana said, we always talk about our rights. We never really talk about our duties. Now here, in the context, and since we have spoken a lot about the duties and everything, I need not go into it again. We will first start, what is constitutionalism? As he has said, it is very different from, there are two distinct concepts. One is constitution, one is constitutionalism. It has been defined differently. By different jurists have defined it differently. The underlying idea is this: the concept of constitutionalism is a mechanism that provides legitimacy to a democratic government. Why should there be a government? That question we may ask. Why? Why should there be somebody to rule over us, to take decisions for us, to say whether we will walk on the left side of the road or on the right side of the road? Why should there be such an injunction? Who should do that? Why? Now, for this, we will have to travel back in time. Let us do a little bit of historical, journey. I am recently reading a book, A People's History of the World, by one Chris Harman. Wonderful book. I am liking it. Now, in that book, it has traced the origins of human beings, man on earth. Now, we find, at any rough estimate, you can say human beings have been around on this earth for at least 100,000 years. But the civilization of which we are talking about, and of being governed by a central authority, a government, a state, whatever, nation state, democracy, whatever, that is of fairly recent origin, only for 5,000 years. We will go back only up to, we will find a sort of a government forming only for the first time around 3000 BC, I am sorry, 3000 BC, which takes the total period to only 5,000 years. So, अक्षय वर्ष हमें बची रही मनुष्य हिसाब से, क्योंकि हमारा गवर्नमेंट जिनसे ना मात्र 5,000 वर्ष रही है। So, आगू लोगों पर क्या पहुंच चुके? This is a question that we should ask ourselves. And Chris Harman in that book has beautifully analyzed that, of course, based on research, certainly. Now, there were no class divisions that we see today. There was no ruler, there was no boss, there was no central authority. And maintenance of law, still then there was the requirement of law. Maintenance of law, was a cooperative affair. People cooperated with each other to obtain means of livelihood. There were, hunting and gathering societies. Basically, food hunt kar either animals or gather kar. So these were the two things that they were doing. But gradually, life became complicated. Pressure on land grew. Competition started. And as a result, wealth became concentrated in the hands of few. And those people became powerful. They wanted to subjugate the others. Broadly, I am just touching the topic, it is not our topic. So just broadly giving you an idea, a perspective rather. So, again, minuscule minority holding majority of the resources, to whom the other persons, all others had to submit. So, this gave rise to the need for governance. When there was a particular piece of land being cultivated by a particular group of people, when pressure grew, other groups also came to that place. They wanted a share of it. There was strife, there was conflict. There may have been wars. In fact, history records that there have been many wars, such wars, over agricultural produce, over sharing of agricultural produce, sharing of agricultural land. So these things gave rise to conflict, and conflict gave rise to the need to have some sort of a control. This is what we call government in the rudimentary form, the most rudimentary and elementary form. Now, in the Indian context, as we prepared for that book, we also did some research. We found that in India, probably for the first time in Kautilya's Arthashastra, we find a definite concept of state. So it is considered to be a book on economic policies and all. It may sound like that, but it is not so. It is a book on statecraft. It also contains some elements of law, which ultimately formed the basis for the Dharma Shastras, the Smritis, that you will see in the museum. Also, it is mentioned in detail in our book. So in Kautilya's Arthashastra, for the first time, we find the concept of the centralized government. Now Kautilya, he justifies the presence of a government. He refers to something called Matsya Naya, which is still prevalent. A situation where the bigger fish swallows the smaller fish. Bada macha, chota macha ukhaye. This is prevalent today. Jorjar mulakta. Ajibi, at a stage you will find where a stronger man is pitted against a rather weaker man is pitted against a stronger man. You know what will happen. To prevent it, Kautilya conceptualized something called Dushta Nigraha, Shishta Paripalana. You need to have a government to rule over the subjects, which is Shishta Paripalana, and also not only Khali Paripalana will have because all human beings are not same. There are inherent violators of law, offenders. So Dushta Nigraha. These two are fundamental concepts of governance according to Arthashastra. And if you look at it, you will find those elements present in the constitution today in a certain form. Then we come to Danda Niti. Danda means not only punishment, but also Danda means hatare dharan kintu danda. Takuli kunis scepter, the king's scepter. Bhagavan Siddha Gita represents Dando Damayatam Niti Rasmi Jivisita. I am the righteousness of the righteous to power the authority of the king. That is represented by the scepter, and I am that. Dando Damayatam Asmi. So, Dandaniti. Here, when I was talking about that Dushta Nigraha, Dandaniti comes into picture. There is a need to also mete out punishments to the offenders. Because, again, we come to a very salutary concept which we often talk about, which Professor Dansana has also talked about in detail, rule of law. But rule of law, if somebody says that we have borrowed it from somebody, some other country, some other culture, some other civilization, well, Professor Dansana has said that he has reservations. I have very strong reservations. I'll prove it how. I have, in many of my speeches also, I have referred to this mantra, which I will, sloka rather, I will recite it again. In Bar Association Hall, many of the loyal friends may have been present and may have heard. It says, Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayanta Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahisha. Remaining two are not necessary, but else. Go Brahmanebhyo Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhido Bhavantu. So what does it say? May God or may not, let good things happen to the country and the king of the country. To such a king, Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahisha, one who rules treading the path of justice. So this is rule of law. And the other two, not very relevant, it says, Go Brahmanebhyo Shubhamastu Nityam, where the material and intellectual resources are protected. Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, welfare state. Maximum welfare to maximum people. This is the goal of the Indian Constitution. That is what we read underneath the 395 odd articles of the Constitution. So, the need for governance. But, you know, as I've said, we may have a situation where power is concentrated in a minority. Professor Dansana was referring to majoritarianism. I am also referring to that. But it does not necessarily, only because we need to have a government, does not mean that we will have a good government. We can have a bad government also. And more often than not, people will agree with me, which I will also refer to a little later about what Nariman has said. So, the possibility of the power being misused or abused is also always there. This is where constitutionalism comes in. Before that, I will just refer. You see, this constitutionalism, the word spelled as COS, so and so, so and so, this may have been coined by some outside. But the meaning, the spirit is very, very Indian, sir. You don't have to go very far. Just go to Dhori. In Bhubaneswar, you will find the Ashokan rock edict. You will see what kind of orders, injunctions, directions and commands he has given. I'm sorry. What kind of injunctions and commands and orders he has issued for his officers to follow. You know, it talks about bail. And we have quoted it in our museum. He says it may so happen he is addressing his judicial officers that it may so happen in administration that an innocent man may suffer imprisonment. So steps must be taken to cancel that imprisonment bail. You understand? So this need to protect the ideals of the government is absolute, and there can be no compromise unless you have a mechanism by which it is ensured that the power that is concentrated on only a few is not misused or abused. Then you are in for trouble. The Supreme Court in I.R. Coelho versus State of Tamil Nadu, I have just forgotten the citation, it says constitutionalism is a legal principle that requires control over the exercise of governmental power. So some control is necessary, otherwise it will become arbitrary, it will become excessive. To ensure that the democratic principles on which the government is formed shall not be destroyed. Very powerful words. The fundamental, what essentially the Supreme Court is saying is that the rule of law, otherwise if you violate, when somebody asked after the constitution was drafted, somebody asked Dr. Ambedkar, and that is very beautifully quoted in a book which I was recently reading. So what do you make out of it? Whether it's a good constitution or a bad constitution? He said, you see, if you look at it in the form of a text, to use the word used by Professor Dansana, it can be good, it can be bad, or it can be inert. But then, it always depends on the persons who are implementing it, or who are in charge of enforcing it. If they are good, the constitution is good, sir. If they are bad, the constitution is bad. So this is constitutionalism. The mental attitude, the approach, the perspective from which the enforcers of the constitution approach or do their duties reflects on the constitutionalism. So it subjects, supposing in a case of a government, the power has been given to, let us say, in a department, the principal secretary. He is the ultimate authority to take decisions in that department. Now he passes an order which is arbitrary, which is unreasonable, because of his personal biases and prejudices. He says, no, I am the secretary, I don't want this to happen, or I want this to happen, or whatever. Now this is a violation of constitutionalism, because if he, instead of doing this, if he simply looks at the order and looks at the matter before him and considers what order should I pass, I should pass that order which conforms to the principles of constitution, or in a way, every time you don't expect the secretary to pull out the constitution from his nearby shelf and open it, articles on it. But what he will do, what order should I pass which will conform to the rule of law आईन सम्मत हम कि मुझे ऑर्डर टा पास करी मते ए लोकटा को भलो लागे नहीं बट व्हाटएवर claim that he has made before me I find that he is entitled to under law so I have to give him मते भलो लागे दे पारे तार तासे तो बहुत कड़ी करता है but more often than not as lawyers you all know good जब कोर्ट में जब कोर्ट ऑर्डर करें I have worked in the government, sir. I was principal secretary law department for 3 years. I have seen the inside out, and I also sat as a judge on the service side. When in a particular matter, I think I don't know whether the lawyers here were there or not. When something was said by the state council, I said, "You produce this file, I will see." He said, "No, sir. You guys said, don't try to bluff me. I call you bluff. You just produce the file. I know what is what. There has to be a file. The file has to be referred to the law department. Law department must have given a note. Let me see that." So the file was promptly produced and whatever. What I mean to say is, just look at this. The man, almost after retirement, just because he had offended the powers that be, his pension is deliberately held up. Something or the other is, in a particular case, I said, why have you not released the pension? He said, sir, she is not coming to sign the papers. I said, yes, you must go and sign the papers. He said, sir, how can you go? I am a paralytic. I am suffering from paralysis. I am at my home on my bed. I am unable to move. These are the medical documents. And I have told them about my condition. I said, you go and get it signed from their house. It was done. The amount was also paid to the court. Why? But underlying it is, the contempt of the authority over that person for some personal reason. Whatever may have been, we are not concerned about. So, absolutism, it will lead to anarchy, arbitrariness, excessive governance. He has very rightly pointed out, less governance, which means I will only follow the rule of law, the remaining thing I will leave it. Then only the state machinery will run properly. We generally, when we are talking about, this constitutionalism, we are referring basically to, 3 things. Separation of powers between executive, judiciary and legislature, which has to be protected at all costs by whoever is in charge of the government. The rule of law. Rule of law is exemplified by the, Article 14, 19, 21. The judicial review. Just imagine, had there been no judicial review, had there been no scope for judicial review, where would that poor man have gone? What would he have done? And let me give you examples. The next senior counsel, Mr. Mahapatra, is there, who is has a huge experience in criminal matters. He is a doyen of criminal law, one can say. He will appreciate my words when I say that it will take very, not even much time. It will not take much time or effort to just start a false FIR against somebody. FIR लिखी तो कैसे नहीं होगा? See, ऐसा करे. Police आप जानिए कि police को खाना से writer भी था, sergeant writer. बड़ा सुंदर लगा. Particular not to share मुझे किसी बड़ा सुंदर लगा. जब आप पढ़िला को जब मैं लेखक को मैं इधर बोले कि it makes very interesting reading. I think it's literature. Tomorrow I have a talk in a literature conference, in a literary festival where the topic is literature and law. Probably I am going to say that. I am not prepared. I will prepare in the night and say that. I have a 161 statement of that girl you will read. Let's see what the follow about it. See, कितने परसेंट तो बहुत बहुत पाए, मुंह में तो ना बहुत बहुत पाए। तब से पहले नहीं, घर के राज्यों में से हमें पढ़ेगा, अगर एयरपोर्ट में तो अगर 376 कौन लिखा है कि कौन सो लिखा है? Sir, every day it happens. Every day all of you are present. Every day it happens. So, what are we doing, sir? That is why I tell you, I have raised that point many times that in every case we should not file charge sheet. Unlike America, in America every case doesn't go to trial. In our case, in our country, every case goes to trial. even if it, has nothing, no person will come to depose as a witness. So, as I said, I gave you another example of withholding of the legitimate entitlement of a person. The punitive measures contrary to law. Like we will punish somebody without holding an inquiry, without following the law laid down in Rule 15 of the OCS CCA rules. We will not do that. We will simply. Recently, I came across a very interesting piece of I call it punishment. It says, but it is worded in such a manner that it will sound like, you are hereby cautioned. Alright. You are hereby cautioned by the authority. You are hereby cautioned by the authority for your indisciplined conduct and for exceeding authority. So anybody reading it will think obviously that there must have been an inquiry where he must have been found guilty for such and such things, indisciplined conduct and exceeding authority. But the authority is magnanimous, generous, so lets him off with a caution. But sir, going deeper, you will find that it has not gone to the authority at all. Secondly, there has been no inquiry at all. So how can you write that for indisciplined conduct? It's a finding. But it is written and sent to him. This is what happens. So, in such circumstances, what happens is, in such situations rather, what happens is, constitutionalism is shown the door. Constitutionalism, and I have another book which I have read, but I am reading and I will continue to read, which is You Must Know Your Constitution by Ali S. Nariman. You know Nariman? The senior Nariman. What he writes, I have quoted it deliberately, I will read it out. He says, please mark the words carefully. I will read it slowly. A constitution is no respecter of persons. It starts. A constitution is no respecter of persons nor of political parties. Constitution आगे यही गोटिए मनुष्य ना कोर्ट लेखा है हमें महात्मा गांधी से चलान करे और समझते उचित कोर्ट लेखा क्यों कांग्रेस पार्टी हम लोग ऐसे करते रहे तो सही जो इंडियन नेशनल कांग्रेस का करे no nothing. India's constitution has not been built around any person or political figure. But one must not overlook an important fact, namely that more than half the countries in the world today, are governed by constitutions that do not inspire or foster a spirit of constitutionalism. We are only paying lip service. We have constitutions. We say so many things. But they do not foster the spirit of constitutionalism. They do have written constitutions. But how successfully they function depends largely on how persons in power, within bracket politicians, work them, and how persons in authority, judges, interpret them. Executive and judiciary. You see the distinction. Mr. Nariman, according to Mr. Nariman, the responsibility is on these two branches. There is of course a felt need for institutional safeguards in every country, not only to protect diversity and to foster unity amongst its people, but also to preserve the rule of law. This is an aspect of constitutionalism that can never be ignored. It is only then that the written document becomes a basic document of governance. As Professor Dansana said, it would be rendered a mere text, a book, inert book, like any other story book that we are reading. But in order to become a live, a vibrant, living, vibrant document or entity, each one in power, every person who discharges power must bow down before the rule of law. That is what essentially is constitutionalism. I'll wind up. I myself have some other commitments. I'll very briefly coming to duties. Well, with the letter that was given to me said only constitutionalism and duties of the citizens, but here I find fundamental has been added. This is not constitutional. One of writers not Muslim. So duties. Professor Dansana said, we clamor for rights, forgetting the corresponding duties. There is a duty. Fundamental duties, 11 duties. Let us not dwell upon it in detail. As he has said, clause A of Article 51A says, what does it say? It says, to abide by the Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions. The national flag and the national flag. So the first part, to abide by the Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions. Institutions, court, the assembly, the secretariat, the executive, the judiciary, the legislature, these are the institutions. But the ideals behind these institutions, which we were just briefly talking about, which we were briefly discussing, and Dr. Dansana has done it in detail with great eloquence. So, we must keep it in mind. So, how does it translate to day-to-day life? Each one of us must carry a pocket-sized constitution. दुकान को वाला भी pocket sized constitution कौन पाएगा हम मालूम पड़ा नहीं बल्कि ये क्या रहा constitution कौन है आपको पूरे कुछ मालूम नहीं रहा हम देखिए constitution में बहुत जगह अच्छी so what it must be ingrained and recently on Constitution Day another organization had invited me to give a talk on this Constitution, another aspect of Constitution, which is very interesting. Why should happiness not be included as part of the preamble? Well, my view was that everybody spoke, but my view was that it is already there. It is already there. Not in so many words, but it is already there. Now, what I meant to say is this: there was the organizer, one of them spoke very beautifully. He said, "Samvidhana sachetanata, consciousness, the awareness of Constitution. If we are aware, I tell you how. I also have given this example quite often. Even in the Bar Association, whoever was present may remember. I was a lawyer. I had gone to Delhi in connection with some work. I had a train to catch. In those days, we couldn't even imagine about flying. But in the later part of my practice days, fortunately, God gave me that much of capability that I could fly also. Otherwise, I used to look at those planes. Now, I had a train to catch. I was a little delayed in starting for the station. It was a cold night, and it was a late night train, probably Purushottam Express or that's what I forget. Today, I got on Saturday. So, I was on a. So while I had taken an auto rickshaw, we were going to that near that Rajpath, which is from the Rashtrapati Bhavan to the India Gate. There are many crossings. We were on one particular crossing. I was getting delayed, so I had told the driver that you must drive quickly, and he was also here compared. But he stopped because there was a red light, and there was no one around. Like today, if you go to Delhi, you will find policemen everywhere, but there, in those days, probably the security thing was not so high. There was no policeman outside. I said, Sarvana, yaar, koi to nahi. Then what he said is very important. He said, nahi. खुद को अच्छा नहीं लगेगा and a wonderful lesson to me. I was a lawyer, supposedly cognizant of the constitutional principles, but here is a man who must not have seen the constitution, but he was following it. Yes. That is how you respect the rule of law. That is how you perform your duty. He said, खुद को अच्छा नहीं लगेगा, कोई नहीं है तो क्या हो? मैं तो हूँ ना. My conscience is watching. It will not go down well with my conscience, sir. I will not go. I really respect that. And these are basically the examples. And for this, you don't need to read the constitution article by article. That is for lawyers, for academicians, for judges. But if you can spread the message by your work, if you, supposing you go to a temple, there's a long line ahead. You know that I can't jump the queue. I have to stand in the line. You go to the airport, nobody will listen to you. You have to stand on the line. Some people make claims on privilege, and they get scolded by others. You pretend not to hear. You pretend not to hear, so that's a different matter. And then another aspect which always bothers me is the damaging public property. I trained by the hotel. आज हमारा भला इलाका में सिटी बॉल तो जुट तक कोई टका नहीं काटो बिना कारण So this is where we fail in our duty. Small things. Small things. Look around, you'll find out. Emptying the garbage in front of another person's house. I see Mati and another concept. Today I am not in power. He is in power. When he is in power, he has punished me. So when I will come to power, I will punish him. Hard mein jaye na aapka rule of law. So constitutionalism, as I said at the very beginning, is a very complicated. It's complicated in the sense it has multifarious avenues. It has many facets. What we need to do is to, I think, I've overshot my time by 5 minutes. Nevertheless, I'll close. So at the end of the day, I will say that this is basically about remembering or maintaining the rule of law. I close by giving you a very earthy example. There was a gentleman, a farmer. He was employed as a hoya, as you know. It was the day on which the harvesting began. Nana pata arambha batila. See, mukhya hoya. He was available right from 4 o'clock in the morning. Because Nana pata 4 arambha. He was there. The owner of the property noticed him while he was taking a break. He was just crying. He was wiping his face with his gamucha, time and again. So this aroused his curiosity. He asked him, "Why gamucha nahi?" He did not say anything. With much insistence, he said, "Sir, gamucha kon sir, jota bola mori gala sir." Mori gala? No sir, kali neki jaitu ratna mori gala to jot kon kaina khana kodara tin kon kori ga. Mun asle na kiyasi. Yes, I tell you, this is from personal experience. I tell you. अरे तू मुंडा भी है तू भाई जा तू जियो रो पड़छ तो जियो घरे तो जियो सब पड़छ तू आसी उठी धान कटे तो नाही के न आसीले कोन एमने कही आसी आपण आज का धान कटा आरंभ अनुकूल मुझे न आसी हम केम जाय you see rule of law what constitution does he know sir how honest he is how committed deep rooted commitment he has to his work this is what we need our constitution envisages wants such a it's not as if we stand here, we give speeches, but at the nearest junction, at the traffic light, I'll say you jump the red light. They'll jump to I'm a traffic light, you jump. People are a little bit unhappy, the criminal side advocates, that sometimes I do not give outside. But why I don't give them, sir? Because of constitutionalism. ସେମାନେ ପଳେଇଲେ ତାକୁ ଆଫେୟାର କରିବା ପାଇଁ କହିଲା ଆଫେୟାର କରିବେନି ତାପରେ ଆମର ଯିଏ ଅଫିସର ଜଣକ ସେଟା ବସିକି ହାଇକୋର୍ଟକୁ ଲେଖୁଥିବ why has it not been disposed of so I would say it's a question of respect sir innate respect for the institution and for the idea that it stands for this is constitutionalism and this is the corresponding duty cast upon us anyway thank you for exceeding by probably 10 minutes. I'm sorry for that. And it's been a privilege to come here. I have been invited earlier also. That was again on constitution, but that was an online, I think, survey was there. So, thank you. And this, I will request the organizers, please keep on, organizing this kind of functions, symposiums. And may I request you, please involve law students. Please involve law students. Law students.
Yes.
Because they are the future.
Yes.
They are coming up. Either they will come to the bar or the bench.
Yes.
Either way, they need to understand the constitution. And as all the judicial officers, almost many judicial officers, they will say that our constitution is for the constitutional courts, not for the. No. You all. Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Mishra. It has been a really wonderful topic on which we have deliberated. And we are really grateful to you for having spent so much of time with us, giving very, very vivid examples. Now it's my turn, and I don't think I have much to say about this after the brainstorming session which all of us had. I'd only just say that this particular topic is quite exciting. And according to me, constitutionalism is just a philosophy of the constitution. This constitution is philosophy, which my learned Justice Mishra has said, Professor Dansana has said, we have to inculcate certain principles. We had those principles so by the ancient Indians. We had the principle of karma, then we had the principle of adhikar. So you have to have a duty, then you have to talk about right. So without a duty, there cannot be a right. Unfortunately for us, we are more conscious of our rights, less conscious of our duties. And that's how Article 51A, as Justice Mishra and Justice Dansana already said, comes into play. And this particular article is very well placed because we talk of enforcement of our fundamental rights as Part 3. We clamor that the government is not following Part 4, that is the directive principles, even though they are not enforced. But we hardly try to say that what are our fundamental duties. We don't do it, either consciously or unconsciously. And that's how the philosophy of the Constitution comes in. Now, so far as this Indian philosophy is concerned, we have already imbibed many, many values. We are blessed to have been born in a country where the inaugural song will tell us it's abundant, it's beautiful in all aspects. It's for us who have framed the Constitution, inculcated the philosophies which is there in the ancient country of like ours, and we have to only have that discipline in order to follow it. And that is the fundamental duty which my Lord has already said, beginning from 1 to 11. That is all there. Now, I don't have to say much on this. I only conclude my speech by quoting John F. Kennedy, who in his inaugural speech after becoming the President of America said, it's now the time has come that where you have to ask what you can do for the country. Don't ask what the country can do for you. So we have spent a lot of time demanding for rights, demanding for privileges, hardly asking ourselves what we can do for the country. Now, so far as one little information which I got during my search, that there's a move to plead before the Honorable Supreme Court for making these fundamental duties enforceable in law. And I found that it was Durga Dutt versus Union of India. It was still pending before Honorable Justice S.K. Kaul, and it was pending as such on 14th of February 2023. My friends may correct me whether it's still pending or it has been disposed of. So maybe we will have it enforceable, but that is not much because the individual has a duty to find out how he works, how he reacts. I thank Justice Mishra for the time he has given us, Justice Dansana for traveling all the distance from Sambalpur to speak to us this evening. I thank all my friends for gathering in large numbers to hear and deliberate on this topic. Thank you very much. I request the organizers for felicitation of the guests.
Now it's time for felicitation to our respected guests. I request Shri Gyanloka Mahanti sir to felicitate our chief guest. Now I request the Chandra Madam Singh sir to felicitate our chief speaker. Thank you so much, sir. Now I request Jagdishwar Naik, Advocate sir, to give vote of thanks.
वर्तमान आमर नेशनल आंथम जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंधु गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तब शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मागे गाए तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय माता की वंदे वंदे समस्त अनुरोध ऐतिहासिक कटक सहर ऐतिहासिक सहर दहीबर आलुदम बहुत फेमस तेणु समस्त अनुरोध आमर दहीबर आलुदम व्यवस्था है समस्त से दर्शन कर मीटिंग इज क्लोज